It doesn't come, like when it comes like maybe once or twice a year, very heavy, and in a time that we don't anticipate it. And so our rivers dry up all through the year, but this once or twice or thrice times a year, it comes and it flashes away. It doesn't get time to seep into the water table. And so sand dam, what happens is the people who construct it come and build a wall on a riverbed and allow it to seep under. And so when I talk about technological advances, sand dam construction, people learn about it because of being educated and being engineers, water engineers. So people like us have to come, get people from outside to come and teach us about that kind of thing. You know, so in many ways, the poverty kind of makes us very vulnerable to impacts of climate change because we lack the capacities needed to adapt. You know, and so that is how, for me, that is why climate change is such an injustice, and our organization is trying to look at the interconnectedness of all these issues. All these issues make our community unsustainable, you know, and so we are addressing it from a very interconnected manner. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to open it up to all of you, guests included. Anybody who has any questions that you'd like to ask me about either her story or organization, or even in our class some of our readings, if you have questions.
I'm wondering, you said that your community is one in which it's often hard for women to become empowered separate from a man. So I'm wondering how they respond to your organization, like how the women specifically respond to this kind of source of empowerment and how the community in general reacts to it.
I've found a lot of support from women, very, very much so. In fact, even before we started it, my friends and I went to my community for about 2 months. I was there, and they stayed for 3 months, doing research and seeing what really the women need, and if we came to serve them, what would be practical for them, and what capacities do they have that we can come and strengthen, you know? And all through this time, they were always telling us, please come and work with us, please, we're the ones who need the help. The men already have education, they have opportunity, you know? So we have a lot of support from women, and the men, it's actually getting better because there has been organizations like World Vision that have also worked with child empowerment. They've worked to educate people about the need to take girls and boys through school, and through these programs, they've kind of addressed a lot about the value to the whole family when you take children through school. And some of these World Vision kids are currently some of the people that are depended upon to be teachers, you know, to be doctors and nurses in the local hospital. And so men are changing their minds, and they're starting to value that. Now, one of the group of women that I met during my research is a group of women who, when they were starting to organize, their men did not support it. They would not let them organize in their homes. They would say, oh, you're coming together to plot how you're gonna divorce your husbands, and to plot how you're gonna, you know, steal from him his money, and it's just like really irrational way of thinking. Anyway, so it started like that, and the women would not organize in their homes. They would just go and meet in churches, or meet under a tree, or in the market center and stuff. Slowly by slowly, they kept organizing. They started, first of all, by helping each other to buy utensils in the house, like, you know, spoons and, you know, a basin to wash your hands with, those kinds of stuff. And then they graduated slowly. They started to help their husbands to pay school fees for their kids. And then, eventually, all the women, there are about 42 women who were in that group, all of them were working together to help each other buy a cow. So when the men saw the cow, they were sold. They supported the movement, and they are now like letting them participate in their home. Now some of the men are actually giving the women some of the money that the women need to bring into the group for the savings, for the group savings. So the impact of what some of the women who have gone ahead have, you know, they've brought into the community is kind of like paving the way for me. It's making it easier for me to go and work there. And I've also found a lot of support from young men who are like my age, my peers, and they find it a very honorable thing that I'm going to do to work with their mothers and with my mother and with young girls, and they say, they kind of are rallying behind me and telling me that you are ours, like we are sending you. So I feel like it's going to be challenging somewhat, especially like in the very, very rural, but I feel like there's enough support to give me courage, you know. Yeah.
Are the women mostly married?
Yeah. Yeah.
So no one in their own homes?
Yes. Now, the group, the 15 who are going to be starting a business in tailoring, some of them are actually widowed. They were married and they have children, and they got widowed because, and so they got, their husbands used to be like pastoralists, they would keep cattle, and because of conflict back and forth between my community called the Pokot with the Turkana, they've lost like husbands and sons, so they ended up moving into the town area. And so they are widowed, but not really single, because, yeah.
I don't know if you have evaluated the possibility of the potential for ecotourism and those type of venues.
I would like to evaluate that potential. I've not really looked into it. I think there might be opportunities, but it's a field I'm not really strong in. So I need people who already have strength in it to come and evaluate the potential there. It might not, actually, one of the things I've thought about is when I think about our organization and sustainability, I've thought about which way can we generate income, and I've actually thought about starting an ecotourism business that would bring people into the community and encourage our community to conserve our local, nature and culture, while at the same time bringing us money into the organization. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not really strong in it, so it's just an idea I'm passing around to the board members to see if, we can find people to help us evaluate that. Yeah. It would really be great, because when I was doing Stan's class, one of the assignments I had to do is called ISP. I decided to do an ISP for my community, and that was very difficult because I had to find information concerning my community. And I tell you, there's not so much that has been written about my community. So we are kind of like really talk of being marginalized. Nobody hears of us or talks about us. So it was really a challenge, and a lot of what I did, I had to call people home who went and did research with the government to know what was going on and look at newspapers. Some of the newspapers also were not online, so it was really a challenge. So I feel like maybe an opportunity like attracting tourists in the area can also expose, okay, there's this negative component of like, being exposed to outside culture, but I think it may give us something positive to give us a good playing ground when it comes to equality.
Does your community have any kind of common religion, and does your organization have any vision of the gospel for you?
Well, the majority of the people in my community are actually Christians, and the dominant church in the area is Catholic and the Anglican church. Other like Pentecostal-like churches have been coming in recently, and they do a very good job about evangelizing and spreading the gospel. Yeah. And so in my organization, we're not going to do any go preach and say that Jesus is Lord, but we are kind of incarnational. We are going to act as hands and feet of Jesus rather than speaking and making people believe in Jesus before they can benefit. So we are taking the word by action. And something else that we're doing, because I'm a Christian, and some of the programs I have learned, like for example, for the conflict transformation, has been Bible-based. And so that's the tool I have to deal with conflict. And so there's a training I'm going to be doing in June that is actually going to be equipping the women in my group, as well as local pastors and other men and local leaders, to know how to sense and address conflict and the tool I'll be using is a Bible study. So in that way, I'm kind of like using my faith and the tools I have to, you know,
When would that be, the conflict? Is it like a course type of thing?
It's a course, yeah. It's gonna be a 5-day retreat, and we're gonna bring like so many people in my community. It's gonna be in June. The date is most likely after June 11. Because I haven't decided yet about the date because the trainer I'm working with is a missionary with the international ministries. I don't know if you know about it. And he's coming into Kenya around the same time to also do a similar training with another group. So we're working with 2 schedules before we decide. But mine is going to actually happen after June 11.
Since you mentioned conflict and conflict resolution, can you talk a little bit about how climate change, gender injustice, all of those kind of can lead to these types of conflicts that you're now trying to deal with in your community?
That's a very good question. Very good question, because like I told you, the group of 15 that I'll be working with were displaced because of conflict over water and pasture resources. So like for a long time, majority of the people in my community have been pastoralists. They keep cattle, and you know, that's the investment, and you know, decisions and value of the community is decided around, you know, the wealth of cattle that you have. And over time, with changing climate, rivers have been drying up, and pastures have been getting less. And so they are finding themselves going to the other neighboring community called the Turkana. We also have our neighbors with a community called the Karamoja in Uganda, and we're neighbors with my mom's community. So anyway, that's a long story of how I don't say my mom's community is mine. Anyway, my mom's community is called Sabaot, so they're on our south. And then towards our east is a community called the Marakwet. All of them are cattle keepers, they value that. And so a lot of my people in West Pokot are finding themselves needing to go to these other communities in search of pastures. And they're getting into conflict over whose water is this, whose land is this, whose pasture is this, and this has kind of like developed a culture where one community complains that my people stole their cattle, and so they come to steal our cattle to replace their cattle. and then we complain that they stole our cattle, and then they come, you know, so it's becoming a conflict that's going on, and it's really affecting the you know, the face of our community, and it's also affecting women are losing their husbands, you know, children are in constant risk of losing their lives. Children are growing up knowing the other community as the enemy, you know, and boys at the age of 13, when they go through initiation, are trained to be warriors against the other community. And so it's kind of like nurturing a sense of animosity in the culture that wasn't always a part of our culture, and all over water and pastures. So it's really affecting us, and it's also affecting the status of women. Like, for instance, like I told you, because of the way women find value through the man, this value also comes in terms of land access. Women traditionally did not have rights to buy land or to inherit it. In fact, for a long time, land in our community has been accessed through inheritance because a lot of it is communal. So they did not have rights to inherit it, and so it's through marriage that you get access to that land and to grow whatever you need to grow on it. The other way is if you have a dad or if you have a brother to give you access. And so the problem is when women lose their husbands and they've come out of the hands of their dads, they kind of are in this vulnerable position of where is my right to this land, you know? And so it's really a bad position to be in, and it's even worse if they have their own daughters. and the sons, because the sons would have inherited the land through the dad. So in many ways, Kenya is working very hard right now to look at these loopholes in the Land Tenure Act, and we are working on filling them and changing it. And another thing is, in my community for a long time, if a woman buys land, for instance, they would not put it under their name. Because if they do, the brothers and the fathers would come and take it, you know? So the law is kind of like giving a special provision for them to, when they buy land and their name is on it, they find protection. And if you take it away, it's, you know, you go to jail for that. So Kenya is improving over that in that way. But definitely, you know, climate change really does affect the status of women. And I'm also thinking about it in terms of, like, a woman will not necessarily find her asset in the cattle because she cannot be allowed to own it. But when she has access to that communal land and she can grow tomatoes, for instance, or vegetables, and she goes and sells it, at least she has a little bit of income for herself, you know? Now the problem is, if the rain doesn't fall and she cannot grow that, it's a direct impact on her source of income, you know? So that's kind of very, climate change really directly affects women. Yeah.
Being that you have issues with drought, is that bringing sanitation problems?
Sorry? Say
Is that developing in sanitation problems? A lot of times the water gets more contaminated. Or water that used to be able to drink from wells, when they dry out, becomes really bad quality. Is that making people more sick?
Yes, yes, we have big issues with that. And we have, for me, when I consider the issue of sanitation, I also think about it in terms of, like, historically, how people have interacted with their cattle. They've given it equal rights to the river as they have the rights to it. And so it's free use, you know, free access. So it's very common to find at the time when a woman is going to fetch water from the river, there is cattle feeding right by there, and you know, it's just muddy water because of the cattle walking around. So sanitation is a big issue there. And one of the ways we are trying to deal with it through the sand dam is actually to address that issue and help people to understand. Sometimes when you have access to water and it's bad water, it can actually become more of an impediment. You know, it can be more of a challenge for your survival than if you, actually it's the same problem. Lack of access to water and access to dirty water is the same situation, you know. And so the way we are doing it, before we construct the sand dam, we're going to work with a group of 12 women representing each of the group. They're going to come from each of the group, and they're going to be trained to be the committee that manages the sand dam, and they're going to be trained on sanitation. And so their job would be to kind of be on the lookout on how people are keeping cleanliness around the sand dam. Another way we are going to protect the water is to actually plant trees near where the sand dam has been constructed. So yeah, sanitation is definitely an issue.
Do you want to look into some sort of filtration? Okay, I'll tell you about it.
Okay. I appreciate it. Do you have a question? Any question from this side?
I was just wondering what the name of the organization means, or where you got it from.
Jitokeze. Jitokeze wa Mama wa Afrika is a Swahili word that means unveil yourselves, women of Africa. Yeah. So, and if you look at our name, if you notice the I is a cocoon, and after the I, it's a T that looks like a cross, and on the K is the wings of a butterfly. So that's a statement that we're trying to make through our logo about the fact that we believe, you know, currently the challenges we are facing and our women are facing, and what our land is facing is kind of like a state of being like a cocoon, but you really have to fight I mean, the butterfly, to transform into a butterfly, has to fight the cocoon. If it stays in it, it will never be a butterfly. And so we believe that, so we are trying to make that statement that the work of working with the women and encouraging them to build their capacity is that part of fighting with the struggles and, you know, trying to fly like a butterfly. And
how long did your mom wait to go back to her dad's village place?
you know, after they told her she should come back as a woman, my mom actually never went back.
Oh, never?
Yes, it's part of her unforgiveness issues that she has. She ended up going into college, associate degree college, and then after that, she started like a small business. She used to sell snacks. Then she met this man from another community. They fell in love, and then they ended up getting married. So that's how they moved into West Pokot, which I now consider my community. That's where I was born and raised. So she actually never really went and lived in her dad's house, like as part after that experience.
Do you think she ever forgave him, or what?
Well, I think that's a journey she's still taking. She's still taking that journey with her dad. My dad, I mean my grandpa, he died like a long time. It's been a long time since he died, but my mom still talks like she still wishes that she wasn't treated the way she was treated. But it's kind of like there's a positive side to it, because she has actually used her story a lot to motivate women who are going through this kind of situation, and young girls who are feeling helpless to the situation. She likes to tell her story as a way of encouraging them. So I don't know, maybe she's finding healing in that. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe you can end our conversation today by talking about hope, and how hope really plays part in Jitokeze, especially when I think you and I had talked about climate change, and you were saying how so much of the media is negative and hopeless. So how does hope play a part?
Well, I was telling Rebecca that a lot of times when climate change is such a big issue, it's a big topic. It's a big debate, and big people are talking for it and against it, and it feels just, sometimes it feels like we're so disconnected from it, and yet it's such a reality. And the way people are talking about it, they're talking about it from the angle of its bigness. But really, it translates to everyday life and everyday decisions, And just like any kind of problem you face in life, if you do not have courage and hope in you to deal with it, you're going to be stuck in despair. You're not going to make decisions to move ahead. And so in many ways, Jitokeze believes that these things are real. Instead of still debating and feeling like, oh, can we really change it? Can we really reverse the CO2 that's in the air already? Can we really reverse the warming that has already happened and stuff? We're saying, let's not think about that now. Let's do something about it. So that's the hope in us, that we can actually do something right now that many years down the line will actually positively impact the issue of climate change. And that's why our organization is so much passionate about having the bulk of our program be on tree planting, because when we help women to adapt, but if we cannot continue to always do that, we need to think about changing the local weather pattern, and so that's why we are investing a lot in agroforestry. I don't know if you guys know about agroforestry. It's like when you plant trees alongside other crops, and so every day you get access to the food, but 10, 20 years down the line, the trees end up changing their environmental conditions in the area by creating a microclimate. And so we are very passionate about that. And so that's why we're making it a bulk of our program. And for us, that's an expression of the hope that we have, that we really, we are not doomed because climate change is here or global warming has happened. You know, we can do something to actually have a good quality of life with it still, you know, even with it here. Yeah.
So in theory, the trees, as they grow, will bring in more rain. Is that what you're
Yeah, when the more trees you have in an area, the foliage, it creates a cover that attracts rain to an area. Yeah. And trees are also good because of, you know, the soil, it helps with the soil structure. Yeah. So one of the ways you can support, I know you're students, but at Christmas time, this is what I was telling my friends, at Christmas time, if you don't want to have a tree cut down, why don't you use the money you would have used to buy a Christmas tree and donate it to our organization so that we can help a woman buy a seedling or 10 seedlings and they can grow trees. So maybe that can be the program for it. I don't know, just